Good morning. This is Issues of the Day, the weekend intelligence brief from Frederick Cybersecurity for the weekend of the 8th and 9th of August. I'm Frederick Wakuliaka. 3 stories this weekend, and none of them are a cyber incident. That's what the AI breach report is for. This is the business and policy layer. What's changing in tax, in government borrowing, and in where AI is actually paying off. Here is what's on the table. First, HMRC has just closed a consultation that's going to hit your supplier's cash flow years before it hits yours. Second, the Chancellor is quietly preparing to borrow up to £9 billion a year, and the market's reaction tells you more than the number does. Third, the Bank of England has worked out exactly where AI productivity gains are landing right now, and it's probably not where your business has been putting its money. Let's get into it. Segment 1, the tax timing shift that hits your suppliers first. On Tuesday, the 4th of August, HMRC closed its timely payments consultation. In plain terms, it's a proposal to move self-assessment taxpayers off the current twice-a-year payment system and onto something closer to payee, tax collected monthly in near real time instead of in lump sums each January and July. Consultations closed. A government response is expected in the autumn. Legislation would follow, and full rollout is targeted for April 2029. That sounds distant. It isn't for you, because the people this actually hits first aren't your own finance team. They are your self-employed contractors, your local clinicians, your freelance consultants, the sole trader suppliers, and smaller practice partners you retain. HMRC's own estimate is that around 2.1 million of the UK's 12 million self-assessment taxpayers fall into the group most likely to be moved onto this system. Here's the mechanical problem. Tax professionals keep flagging the overlap period. When someone moves on to the new system, they'll for a time be paying tax on the old basis and the new basis simultaneously. Monthly deductions calculated off a prior year's return, starting before their old system liability is even settled. Some analysis this week put it starkly: certain taxpayers could be asked to pay close to 2 years of income tax inside a 14-month window. For a consultant billing you on 90-day terms, that's not abstract, that's a liquidity gap. And there's a second issue underneath it. HMRC will often be calculating these monthly payments off estimates or last year's figures, because the current year's accounts won't be finalized yet. So your supplier could be paying against a forecast that's wrong with the correction landing later. Variable income, multiple income streams, that gap gets worse. Now, worth knowing, there is a second unrelated track running in parallel. The think tank Bright Blue has floated abolishing employer national insurance entirely this week, funded by new income tax bands running up to 52% at the top in exchange for the self-employed getting workplace-style benefits. Not government policy, but it tells you the whole self-employed tax settlement is under live reconsideration from more than one direction at once. Writers HMRC is separately trying to change the timing mechanics for that same population. The key insight: this is a supply chain liquidity story, not a tax administration footnote. Healthcare providers relying on locums and agency clinicians carry the sharpest version of this. Staffing shortages already give locums leverage to demand faster payment or work. Professional service firms with associate consultants and contract specialists carry it directly too. What do you do about it? Map this weekend which contractors and suppliers in your own network sit inside HMRC's affected population. Then have the payment terms conversation early before 2029 turns into a surprise liquidity event, and before a competitor gets there first by offering faster terms as a retention tool. Segment 2, the Chancellor's borrowing plan, and why the market's surge matters more than the number. Tuesday evening, it emerged that Chancellor John Healey is drawing up plans to increase the government borrowing by up to £9 billion a year for infrastructure, housing, and business investment incentives. The mechanism isn't a straightforward borrowing increase. It leans on Rachel Reeves' old fiscal rule changes, which let spending on assets, infrastructure, equity stakes in companies be offset against the government's balance sheet rather than counted as pure costs. Officials are reportedly looking at how to classify more spending as an asset to unlock headroom without breaching the rules. Healey's framing in a Telegraph column was hands-on resilience, naming the Iran conflict directly as the kind of shock this is meant to insulate against. Burnham has separately talked about wanting flexibility in the fiscal rules, which reads as political cover for Healey to make the technical case. A Treasury source still insists fiscal discipline is the number one priority, sitting in obvious tension with a plan built explicitly to expand borrowing capacity. Here's the more useful signal than the headline figure. The market barely reacted. Richard Carter at Quilter called it small fry against total government borrowing, which hit 129 billion pounds in the year to March. That muted reaction tells you the bond market is for now reading this as technical and largely priced in, not a fiscal instability signal. That could change fast if the plan grows before the budget or lands alongside something bolder. What actually matters for planning is where the money is pointed: infrastructure, housing, business investment, and channeled partly through regional mayors rather than centrally. That's a structural shift in who allocates public investment money, and it matters against a housing sector that's genuinely struggling right now. 8 profit warnings from major residential developers in the first half of this year, matching the pace at the onset of the financial crisis. Vistry's home sales down 11%. Persimmon's numbers were better, revenue and profit both up 15%, but even Persimmon warned build cost inflation could accelerate through 2027, partly from the Iran conflict feeding into materials and energy costs. Only 143,000 homes were built in the UK last year, the lowest since 2015. Put that together, and Healy's plan looks less like general fiscal loosening and more like a targeted attempt to substitute public investment for private developer caution. If you're in professional services supporting construction, engineering, planning, construction sector, legal and accountancy position now for a regionally mayor-led pipeline rather than a centralized one. Sorry. If you are in financial services with guild, infrastructure, finance, or regional investment exposure, watch the 28th of October budget closely for the actual mechanism chosen. What you do about it, assign someone in finance or strategy to specifically track that budget mechanism. Equity stakes versus conventional infrastructure spend versus mayor-led allocation carry very different implications for which relationships and which regional offices matter. Segment 3, where AI productivity is actually landing, and it probably isn't where you've been investing. Thursday, the 6th Bank of England staff published research through Bank Underground on where AI is actually showing up in UK productivity data. The analysis using Office of National Statistics output per hour data draws a distinction that matters directly to your AI investment case. Almost all of the current productivity gain sits inside the sectors that build AI, not the much larger set of sectors, including yours, that buy and deploy it. The scale is stark. Computer programming and consultancy multiplied its share of productivity growth tenfold between the two periods compared. Information services flipped from actively dragging down productivity to contributing positively. These are the AI builders and infrastructure sellers. For sectors that are net customers, financial services, professional services, healthcare, the research is a lot less encouraging. Don't expect your AI spend to show up as a measurable productivity gain the way it's showing up for the vendors selling you the tools. The gains are real, they are just not landing with you yet. Running alongside that separate, indeed, data shows job postings falling fastest in occupations most exposed to automation, manufacturing postings sitting 58% below 2022 levels, and Morgan Stanley's AlphaWise survey put the UK at 6% net job loss over the past year attributable to AI exposure, above the 5% global average, while UK productivity gains from AI led the same comparison at 10.3%. So the UK is getting the strongest AI productivity uplift among countries measured, and one of the harsher job rates in exposed roles at the same time. So to the contradiction. You get the strongest AI productivity uplift among countries measured, but then you have one of the harshest job losses in exposed roles at the same time. Governor Andrew Bailey's public line has been more optimistic than this data supports in the short term. He said AI is unlikely to be a mass destroyer of jobs and that economies adapt over time. Treat that as the long-run view, not a claim this transition will be smooth. And it sits alongside the bank's own financial stability report, warning that AI adoption in banking is creating new cyber an operational concentration risk, shared platforms and cloud providers, meaning one institution's failure could ripple through the system faster. The PRA has already named AI adoption a 2026 supervisory priority. What do you do about it? Three things. Build your AI investment case on operational specifics, time saved, errors reduced, capacity freed, not on an assumption that sector-wide productivity stats will vindicate the spend, because right now they don't for consuming sectors. Treat treat this week's job posting data as an early warning signal against your own hiring pipeline in automation exposed roles, not a distant academic finding. And if you are making public claims about AI-driven productivity gains to investors, clients, your own board, be ready for those claims to get measured against increasingly granular Bank of England and Office of National Statistics data that can now tell the difference between genuine gain and spend. That hasn't converted into output yet. Here's what ties these three together. The state is tightening how it collects tax from the self-employed, loosening how much it's willing to borrow, and producing harder evidence on where AI money is actually paying off, all in the same fortnight, all before the same October budget. None of it is a crisis on its own. All of it is the kind of granular sector-specific data and policy details that's going to keep surfacing in board conversations for the rest of the year, whether you have prepared for it or not. So 3 decisions before Monday. One, map which contractors and suppliers in your network sit inside HMRC's affected population and get the payment terms conversation started early. 2, assign someone to track the October budget for the specific borrowing mechanism. Healy lands on because equity stakes, infrastructure spend, and mayor-led allocation point at different relationships and different regions. 3, audit whether your AI investment case actually rests on measurable operational specifics or on an assumption of sector-wide gains this week's Bank of England research says haven't reached you yet. Fix the narrative before a board or a client tests it. I'm Frederick Wakliaka. That's Issues of the Day for the weekend. On the 8th and 9th of August, the AI Breach Report is back Wednesday, the 12th, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed what I have to offer.
Show